And then it gets to a point where you start thinking, well, what's wrong with you? Because if it's not the organization, then it has to be you. And that's the reason why you're not with anybody. You almost start thinking that you're defective in a way. But yet there's all these other single people, single sisters out there as well. It comes to a point where you've reached a crossroads where you have to do what makes you happy, because nobody else can do that for you. Nobody else can find that path. And if you know what makes you happy, go do it. I just wanted to let them know, hey, I'm dating somebody. We've been single for so long. Be happy for me.
Oh, you're letting them know you're excited that you found somebody? Hey, look, Jehovah answered my prayers.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Hi, this is JT, and welcome to The Critical Thought. Recently, Lady C has been putting together some very interesting interviews with women all over the world. It's called The Struggles of Jehovah's Witness Women. And as you know, generally speaking, around the world and in society in general, women often have to struggle a little different from the way men have to struggle. And to add insult to injury, you add being one of Jehovah's Witnesses on top of that. It can make it truly a struggle. Well, recently she did an interview that dealt with being single. And being single in society in general is a challenge for many women in many cities and many places around the world. As I said before, add being one of Jehovah's Witnesses to that. It becomes even more of a challenge. And I just wanted to share some thoughts about being a single Jehovah's Witness and the challenge one can face. Recently, Lady C did an interview with Ronnie C about being single and being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm going to tell you, being an elder, I saw the challenges of being single for Jehovah's Witness women. And the reason why is because of how much these sisters express concern about this. The challenge in the organization being single is very interesting. And even young men are affected by it as well. But for women, it becomes even more of a challenge. Typically, in our average congregation, you will find that there are more single women than single men. It becomes a numbers game. Sisters literally are going to have to compete for males. And it's kind of sad because many times the selection of males sometimes is not what sisters want. And it becomes a real challenge. And so, as long as I can remember, it's always been, especially for sisters, if you're interested in a brother, you need to make sure that he's a ministerial servant or make sure he's very active in field service. And those type of things became the criteria. And so you would end up with sisters who may have a brother who might be a regular pioneer, but he really wouldn't make a good husband. But he met the Watchtower's criteria of what would constitute a good husband. And so what you would find is a lot of these sisters would marry these types of individuals. And after they've been married for a couple of years, they realize we have very little in common. We're not compatible. Now, of course, the situation is you're stuck. And so you would actually see people, and I've seen this myself, you'll see people who end up dragging through marriage for years and years, just suffering. And eventually one person will end up committing adultery and then they will be freed. But it was just sad. So what has happened is over the years, as the society has all these criterias, it reduces the number of available and selectable men that sisters have to choose from. I know myself, one of the things that I saw very personally and up close was how sisters would often come to you and they would say, Brother JT, I would like to get married. What can I do to get married? And it's interesting how the society always explains that sisters, it might be that Jehovah knows you're not ready yet. Of course, you're talking to a 35-year-old woman. You will never hear anybody, any elder, circuit overseer basically tell a brother, we don't think you're ready yet because he's 35 years old. So what it does, it puts the onus on the sister that there's something that she's lacking in, something that she is failing to do. And as a result, she doesn't become a candidate for marriage. And this type of putting burdens on people that's not even there is very sad. If you talk to a lot of single women, they'll tell you in the organization, they've heard that talk before. Well, there's something that maybe you need to do for yourself. There's nothing they need to do. It's just simply the numbers are just not there. It's a numbers situation, and that's what it is. Leave it alone. Don't make the person feel guilty for something they have no responsibility for. One of the things that we would often do, and I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness kid, so I saw this growing up. When I became an adult, I made a decision that the way a lot of the young people were treated, they needed an outlet. And this is one of the challenges that the organization has never faced. As an elder, I've had this conversation with so many other elders, with circuit overseers, district overseers, even guys at Bethel. This has always been an issue in the organization. What do we do for our young people, our single people? And the answer is very simple. Tell them to move more products, move more books, knock on more doors. And the problem is that doesn't feel the need of these young people. And it's very, very sad that that's what is oftentimes offered as a remedy for themselves as young single people. Let me give you a perfect example. Growing up as a kid, we never had anything to do. The organization will say the responsibility for recreation and so forth falls on the parent. Now, in theory, that sounds very reasonable, sounds logical, but in practice, it simply isn't there. You have a single sister with 3 kids. She needs some help. But will she get any help in terms of recreation with her 3 boys or 3 daughters? Typically, she will not. And so these young people will then find themselves literally with nothing to do. As they move into adulthood, what do they do as a young single teenager, young person in their early 20s? Once again, same thing. So with single people, they need activities. In fact, in many denominations, they recognize that young people need activities. In the congregation, it's recognized, but very, very little is done. You can talk to any Jehovah's Witness kid that grew up as a witness, became an adult. They'll tell you, as a congregation many times, this was an issue. Circuit overseers often talked about, but you always kept coming back to the same thing. Just get them out there in field service. Get them out there in field service. And that simply didn't fill the void in a lot of these young people's lives. One of the things that we tried in our congregation was for our young people, our single people, was at least once a month or so, get together and go bowling. That's all. Just go bowling. You go in field service in the morning, in the afternoon, you go bowling. And when we started out, it was great. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way. I got a phone call from the circuit overseer. He says, JT, I understand that you're organizing bowling activities. And I said, yeah, we're trying to have something for the young people, give them something different. We have a lot of young people, a lot of single people, give them some activities to do. And what this guy told me, it was just sad. And so the circuit assist tells me, he says, look, our purpose is to get the friends together for spiritual activities, not for recreation. That's up to the family and individuals. And of course, in all practicalness, that's not what actually happens. Families many times are not able to organize these things. And so, as they say, it takes a village. But in the case of the congregation, that's not the case. And so what you find is that you end up with this scenario of young people getting married very young. And it is a problem. I remember as a kid growing up, there was a brother, he was like 3 years ahead of me. He got married at 17. And the reason he got married at 17, him and the little sister got married at 17 is because everybody was quoting to them the scripture. It's better to marry than burn. It's better to marry than burn. And so because they have no other alternatives, no activities, this becomes what they turn to. And so these young people end up getting married too young. They end up marrying the wrong person, people that they're not really compatible with. The only thing they share in common is they both go out in field service a lot. And a lot of it, unfortunately, revolves around the way the organization structures itself. It provides its young people, its single people, with very little to no activities. There are lots of denominations that they will have things that focus on single people because single people have certain needs. That's not the case as a Jehovah's Witness. If you don't find yourself in a congregation where you can find someone you can do something with, you're in trouble. And there are people that they'll get with congregations, but overall, that's not the case. So, of course, the only thing that matters at this point is that they meet Watchtower's criteria. I remember when I was at Bethel, you would see guys, guys that they was just duds. I'll be honest with you. And they would go home and they would come back with a wife, and you're like, how did he get her? But she was a sister back home in Kentucky or whatever, and he's a Bethelite, and he met the Watchtower's criteria of this man as a good husband, and they end up marrying them. And that story is told over and over again, where you would have female Jehovah's Witnesses who would literally just have to settle for whatever was there. And many times the type of men that were there really wouldn't make a good husband, but they met the Watchtower criteria. The man is good out in field service. He can move some products. So that means he'll be a good husband. but he may not be a good provider. And those things were something that many times they would just overlook. And when you listen to the stories and you talk to the sisters, I know when I was an elder, who had been married to people, and that would be what they would tell me. We were pioneer partners. But that doesn't mean that you're going to make lifetime partners. But both of you were moving Watchtower's products, so you assume he'll make a good husband. And these are the type of issues that so many single sisters especially have to deal with. And it's very, very sad. And their lives, who they are as individuals, these things, they take a back seat to everything that they do. And so it's very unfortunate. And so what Lady C has been able to do in her interviews is talk to people who are actually living examples of the challenges that they face as a single woman having to select a mate from within the Jehovah's Witness denomination. It's very limited, and so therefore they're left many times with whatever is left over. And this is a person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And to think that you will find many times these female Jehovah's Witnesses are stuck with men that is very, very difficult to live with. And as an elder, you have to deal with that. And of course, you can't tell them leave your mate because Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in divorcing other on the grounds of adultery. So you literally watch people's lives for years just drag through as they just struggle just to survive each and every day. So I tell you, looking back since we've left the organization, I mean, you can literally see just how close the organization environment is. The growth for these people, critical thinking, it's just not there. And so if you have not had the opportunity to listen to some of the struggles of women of Jehovah's Witnesses, take the time. I tell people all the time, listen to it and you will hear stories repeated that are all showing the same thing. I mean, it's just amazing. As an elder, you saw it, but when you stand back and look at it, you're like, oh my goodness. Because now you see the ramifications of single women having to just select many times anything that was left that's called a brother. And many times you would have sisters who would be at the baptismal pool just waiting for a man to come out of the water. Because, they're not able to pursue a real career, a college degree, or whatever. This is pretty much all that's left. Get married and pioneer, move the products. And the result is they find their lives down the road just miserable because they have very little in common with these individuals because of the criteria that they use to select the marriage mate. And that's very unfortunate. And we have seen it, and this story is being told, and you're hearing it. If you haven't had the opportunity to listen to some of the interviews, I invite everyone to take a few moments, listen to the interviews, and you will see as people relate their own personal stories and how their decision-making process, how they came to the decisions to do the things that they did. It's absolutely amazing. So we look forward to more interviews. We invite those who would like to share their story, please contact us, and we will try to get your story out as well. This has been JT, and thanks again for tuning in to The Critical Thought.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.